Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
That's right.
Welcome to the podcast, Lee.
I did it so well that he was mesmerized.
Each week we come to you guys with fantastic illustrator interviews or interesting questions from people just like you. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
You know, there's an adage in podcasting where it's like every episode is someone's first episode, and today it's Lee White's first episode, you'd think.
Well, I was thinking about something that they were going to learn that was brand new. That's a little money tip I'm going to give in a second, but it happens to be sitting right next to my desk, so I was looking at it while Will was talking.
Okay, I want to hear about that, but first I want to tell everybody that right now we're in the pre-enrollment phase for Self-Publishing Pro. This is where we have a 6-video mini course on how to get started in self-publishing. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you know we've been talking about this course that we're working on. We've been putting all of our knowledge and energy into this course, but we wanted to give people a taste of it for free, just so they know, because it's going to be an investment to enroll in the course. So this is really to know if this is the thing for you, right? So I just want to point you to selfpublishingpro.com to go sign up for the free mini course. It's a 6-video course, and check that out. And you'll get an email telling you where you can watch those videos. I think they're going to be dripped out over a week's time to people, but now's the time to sign up for that. And then you can get essentially access to when we open the doors to the enrollment for Self-Publishing Pro. I wanted to get into, though, we talk a lot about the problems with traditional publishing on this show. Each of us have published with traditional publishers. I'm working on a book deal right now with a traditional publisher, and it has its place, it has its purpose, and it has its benefits, but it's not for everybody. And increasingly, I think there are several sort of issues that are getting, I guess, compounded over the years with traditional publishers. And the first one of these is the series, the gauntlet of gatekeepers that you have to go through in order to get a book deal, get it published, and then have it actually be a bestseller or have any sort of sales, mm-hmm. Right? So what are the gatekeepers that you guys have encountered in between your idea and that book being in someone's hand?
Well, I have
reading
newfound info on this exact topic because I split with my agent, which that is a whole conversation we haven't had yet. But I split with my agent last month, and so I'm solo right now. I'm talking to another agent, possibly signing in
mm-hmm.
May, but I'm just by myself right now, just like everybody else is out there that's listening who wants to get a book done. So I was like, okay, well, in the past when I've been by myself, I have gotten book deals on my own with no agent, and mm-hmm. I used a company called Agency Access, and I think I talked a little bit about that on the podcast before, where I use their emailer, and it's like $50 a month, and it targets all these very specific people at the big publishing houses, Penguin and Simon & Schuster and all these. And so I sent out the emailer, and I got literally no opens. And so I think that the email system is the first gatekeeper because you cannot email these people. Mm-hmm. And so I was worried that there was some kind of blocker that the publishers should figure out. They're getting all this mail from Agency Access. So they put out a blocker, and it worked really, really well because nothing got through. Nothing was even opened to see if they want to hire me. And so I copied some of those names, put them into my own emailer, And because I was like, maybe there's a filter. And it turns out there was a little bit. I sent out a list of 80 people. And out of those 80, I got 12 that opened it. And then, 17 that opened the email. And out of that, 12 of the people went to the website. But that's a super low percentage. And I don't even know if I did it again, would those be blocked now? And so I
Right.
think the first gatekeeper is an electronic gatekeeper that if you are unagented, I don't know how you get a book deal right now, unless you happen to be a lottery winner where an art director or a publisher happens to see your work on Instagram or something and then says, hey, that's the person for this project. So that's a real, you're just a needle in the haystack at that point, just hoping something happens. Not very likely. I don't know how you get through the digital gatekeeper. Honestly, I don't.
Yeah.
But even if you do, then there's the fact that traditional publishers are interested in certain markets and totally uninterested in others, and they're often not willing to explore to find markets that haven't been discovered, and there are a lot of those. And that's where self-publishing is so important. In fact, a lot of the markets that traditional publishers are going after today were discovered through self-publishing.
Right.
So in other words,
Yeah.
someone's successful in self-publishing, they make a grip of money, and then someone from traditional goes, hey, there's a market over here that we're not going after.
Right.
Right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I think that's why for me personally, I've self-published all through the years before I ever got book deals, while I had book deals, and currently, if the book deals went completely south and I wasn't able to get any more work in publishing, I would always still be able to self-publish because I built up an audience who really likes and appreciates my work, and I consistently make stuff for them. You know, last year I did a spaceships book. This year I'm doing a robots book. Who knows what I'm going to do next year? But that's sort of the appeal. The main reason we focus on self-publishing is it's like almost for me it's like R&D for future projects, or maybe something for publishing, or maybe it's just what it is. Like I've got a little idea. Let's put it together in a book. See if people like it. Oh, they like it. Let's roll with that. Let's keep going with it. And there's nothing stopping me from doing that. I don't have to, spend 3 months putting together a pitch deck only to have people say this isn't the right time for this particular thing, or we like everything except change the main character.
Right.
So that's really the reason and it's the reason SVS even exists. We see a problem, we see an opportunity to be able to help people with that problem, and then we offer, an affordable option for you to learn about that problem, right? And right now it's Self-Publishing Pro. So I just wanted to let you know, go to selfpublishingpro.com, put your email in there, click submit, and then you'll get an email response in the next couple of days with the video series you could start watching. So, all right, Lee, what was the thing that the money thing you were gonna talk about?
This is just an aside, but I mean, as freelancers, I've been talking about freelancing for the past couple of weeks. Healthcare is always an issue, right? I mean, just getting insurance and all that stuff. And I know it really bogs people down. Some of you guys probably know this already, but depending on what your health plan covers, and it really is going to change how much you spend on healthcare, really understanding what your plan is. And my point is, my little story that I wanted to tell real quick was my son got sick last week and he needed some antibiotics, right? So we went and to fill the prescription, and we got there and it was $400 for a 1 month supply of antibiotics. So I went through the deep details of my health plan and what it covers and all that stuff. And I saw this listed as being covered, and it originally wasn't covered. So I call the pharmacy, or I called my healthcare company, insurance company. And then I call the doctor and I say, hey, this is what my plan covers. And they changed it from a tablet. You're not going to believe this, a tablet to a capsule. Same thing. I'm not going from brand name to generic. It is the same one.
I believe it.
Yeah.
$5.
I believe it.
$5. I'm like, why is there a $400 option if there's a $5 option?
Because the doctor gets a kickback if they prescribe the other one.
Oh my goodness!
And then if you ask,
I just couldn't believe it.
They're willing to change it if you ask, but if you don't ask, they'll just assume you have money.
Right. So that's my pro tip.
For them, they don't see it as they're gouging you, the individual. They're like, well, if the insurance is going to pay for it, I'd rather get a $400 paycheck instead of a $5
right.
paycheck.
And I think you're right. I think the only reason this came to a head is because the insurance didn't cover it, and so I'm like, hey, wait, I'm not paying $400. But my point is, dive in if you guys are going to the doctor or whatever. Ask them. Bring your even. I'm going to start bringing my actual PDF of what's covered. And when the doctor prescribes something, I'm saying, is that on here? And if it's not, you need to switch to something that's on here. You just got to be careful. And
listen,
so, like Will said,
when you show up at a
ask.
doctor's office with a binder that says insurance notes, they know you do your homework, and that you're not someone to be trifled with. That's for sure.
Money tip.
That's good. I thought for sure you were going to be like, I found the exact same thing in Mexico. So I booked us flights. We're heading down there. Got a vacation in Mexico. We'll pick up drugs.
That's right.
And then I found a mule to take him over because you can't take him on the airplane.
No, I'm self-publishing this new pill. So I'm going to be selling it.
Well, that's going to be our next course is Insurance for Artists Pro. Honestly, that could be a way to save a ton of money if you knew what you were doing. Okay, first question for today. Unless anything else we wanted to.
No, that's it.
To go over.
That's it.
This comes to us from Ryan. He says, "Dads have dreams too." Hi, Lee, Jake, and Will. I've been listening to 3PP since episode 1, and he just says he's grateful for the podcast. So we're really grateful for him and for everybody who's listened to it. The situation, he says, I was listening to your most recent podcast about the merits and pitfalls of feeding the social media beast. And I'm a stay-at-home dad, homeschooling father of 4, and work as a freelance designer. Been designing for 15 plus years. But I have aspirations of increasing the illustration work I do. I've been working on a comic based on the wonderful, trying, and hilarious situations dads find themselves in, sometimes especially as a dad in a stay-at-home mom's world. My goals with the comic are twofold, okay? To use this as training around for improving my storytelling and pacing, values and color, composition, and anatomy gestures, among others. So he wants to essentially learn his fundamentals or improve his fundamentals through making a comic, which is one of the best ways I think you can go about doing that, right? Agreed. Number 2, he says, after 1 to 2 years, to collect all of these comics into a book to sell. What would be incredibly satisfying would be if this book, A, could provide some income for my family, and B, would be a physical artifact that's valuable to others. Maybe that's the wish of every artist. I know it's my wish. That's why I do all my self-publishing, for those 2 things. The original strategy was to build up a following on Instagram and then hopefully find that golden 1,000 followers who would be interested in purchasing a book. However, Jake also talks a lot about building up a newsletter database that you have personal control over. My question, should I bother with the time and energy it takes to post online and engage, or would it be better to find a different platform, not sure what, to build up a newsletter that I could market to? As you can imagine, my time is quite limited, so making a well-informed strategic decision seems almost desperately necessary. Thank you tremendously for your time and thoughts. Love, Ryan. He didn't say love, but I added that part.
It's implied.
I mean, this is the conundrum we all find ourselves in. It's like I have an idea. How do I get access to people?
Right.
Especially if I'm short on time and money. So my initial thing is like, there's time, money, and hard work, right? And you can eliminate one of those, right? You have to have at least two of those in order to become successful. So if you want to fast track it, then it's going to be hard work and money, right? And you're going to invest in advertising for Facebook ads. You're going to have to do something to cut through the noise. You're going to hire micro influencers, pay them $100 or exchange trade off for things to get the word out there. But if you don't have money, then it's a time, hard work scenario where you just have to essentially set aside every day or a few hours a week to really devote to working on this thing and sharing it online. And I always look at like pedaling a bicycle as like, you want that bicycle to move forward, you have to have both pedals going. Have you ever tried pedaling with one foot?
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't work.
You get it over and then there's no like enough inertia to pull it back up the other side. So the two pedals are making things and marketing things. And that's how your career bicycle moves forward, is you make a thing, you market it, you make a thing, you market it. And I think social media is, for as noisy as it is, there's three things that really, this has been on my mind. I just did a YouTube video, so it's like front of my mind, a YouTube video about this. There's three things that help you cut through the noise, and that's the same three things that you find in like friendships. So think about your friends or family members, and the ones that you have the best connection with, the best relationship with. It's probably an authentic relationship. You can trust them. It's probably a communicative relationship. There's a dialogue happening between you and this person. And it's probably a consistent relationship. It's someone you talk to consistently. And, if you don't talk to a friend consistently, the friendship kind of, settles a little bit. If you don't trust a friend, same thing. It kind of settles a little bit. You lose that friend. If you don't communicate with a friend, same thing. So social media is the same way. You have to be authentic, you have to communicate, and you have to be consistent. And I think if you follow those principles, the other factor is just time. Over 1 to 2 years of you consistently sharing a thing on Instagram, sharing your progress, sharing like a PDF download of, the first 5 pages made neatly and nicely into a little book in exchange for people's emails. Now you're growing an email list, right? And I think this is your path forward. I don't know. My microphone's
What is going on with your mic?
It keeps if you're not watching on YouTube, my microphone keeps like rising up over my head. I have to keep pulling it down. I don't know. Does that make sense? I don't
Let me take your bike analogy one step further. So I love the pedals on both sides. Let's talk about the tires. If those tires are flat or very low on air, you can pedal really hard and you're not going to get it to go anywhere. And to me, the tires are the quality of the creativity in your project.
Yes.
So
exactly,
you're
that's
probably
where the
going
rubber
there.
hits the road.
Right. So
Wow.
the thing is, if your idea for your comic or whatever it is, because whoever's listening to this, if you're thinking about making a thing, if it isn't super creative, you can pedal all you want. But every time you stop pedaling, it's just going to slow down and you're going to come to a stop. There's no coasting involved. In order to get momentum, you have to have a creative idea. And we were talking about that Death Water. Can you bring that up again? That just like nutshell that story.
Oh, Liquid Death?
Liquid Death. Death Water. Yeah.
The creator of Liquid Death, Mike Cesario, I think his name is, he essentially figured out a way to market water to a whole new group of people that wasn't really drinking water. And he's this punk rocker. He, in like high school and college, he was a punk rocker and he was a skater dude, right? And so I always sort of loved that culture. And he's like, he looked at the landscape of water bottles, and you think about it, what's the difference between Dasani and Aquafina and I don't know, Arrowhead, right? One has a red label, one has a blue, two have a blue label,
Right.
right? And they're all in the same plastic bottle. Some people change the shape of the bottle. One has ridges, one's, smoother or whatever. And he's like, no, we're going to put it in a can. We're going to call it Liquid Death. We're going to market it in the most outrageous way possible, using animation and chainsaws and whatnot. And guess what happened? What started out as like a gag Facebook post turned into a multi-million-dollar company. It wasn't as easy as snapping your fingers. If you listen to interviews with this guy, there's a lot of hurdles to come by. Namely, nobody cans water. You have to be able to can things at the water source, and there was no canning facilities where people were sourcing water. So he had to figure that out. And the place he found it was, I think, a place in Austria that did it. So he's like, great, I found a place. But then you have to figure out how to ship water, one of the most heaviest objects to ship back to the United States. So, there's hurdles, and you partner with people to help you solve these things. But you don't do anything without a really unique and cool idea and a way to differentiate yourself from everybody.
Right. It's so important. So if your thing is creative, your efforts will build an audience over time. Yeah.
What do you think, Lee? I want to ask you, I get pushed back a lot of times. They're like, Jake, you started Instagram in 2011 and you were able to grow this massive following. And who are you to talk about, using social media when you already have 500,000 followers on
That's a good
Instagram?
point.
You came to Instagram 4 years ago or 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, very infrequent poster.
But you came in a very ineffectual, weak way.
It was. I did. I just post stuff. There's no plan. And that's why my Instagram account languishes at 20. I think I got it up to 22,000 followers. But
22,000 isn't bad.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. I mean, and when I put an effort towards it, it works. I mean, I did that whole push over December, January, where I was posting at least 4 times a week. And that's only stopped because I've been doing my taxes and doing all kinds of stupid admin stuff. But I'm getting ready to start again. But I have a plan for it, and I actually schedule the posts and all that stuff. And it works. I mean, it builds up. I started doing a little bit of advertising for it, like we talked about on one of the posts, through Instagram, and started building even more followers there. So it works. You just have to feed the fire. But it's sort of a necessary evil, I think. I don't love doing it. I don't like doing it actually at all. I want to just paint. And, that's the thing about being, if you're a student and you're studying illustration, relish that time because you're getting to make images and think about craft and think about storytelling. We spend so much time doing admin, filming podcasts, filming classes, just doing the stuff of being an illustrator that when I actually get to illustrate, it's the smallest part of my week. And I'm trying to change that actively, but man, it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. What are you showing us, Will?
I'm showing that Lee has 21,000.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's not the 22 he claimed, just to make sure. Now look at who has 32. So see,
32.
So Lee, we ought to be in a competition.
Those are all Bitcoin. That's those are digital followers. They're not even real.
Bitcoin
They're bot
followers.
accounts.
But I think the thing is, if you're consistent, there's a hard way to be consistent. There's an easy way to be consistent. The hard way is, it's Wednesday morning. I promised I would post something today. Let's see, what do I have? What have I been working on? Oh, here's a thing. Let's snap a picture. Let's figure out the words. Okay, we're done. That took 30 minutes. Let's move on. That's the hard way. The easy way is, okay, I need to post 20 times in March. Let's sit down. Let's figure out let's gather all the images into one folder that I want to post. And here's the thing, you could post old images. Nobody knows that they're not new, right?
Right. It's amazing how much you think that people are following and really judging the stuff you post. They don't. You could post something that you posted 2 weeks ago and they wouldn't know.
Right. So you gather all these images into one folder. You get out a Word document. You write down all the posts, all the wording for all the posts. You figure out all the hashtags up ahead of schedule. What would normally take you a half an hour per post is now taking you 5 minutes per post, right? And then you stick them in a folder. And the way Instagram works now is you could then spend the next hour putting all the images into Instagram with the text, archive the post or schedule the posts, and then in one afternoon, you've done all of your social media for the month. And then you could go back in and once they're scheduled, you know that Wednesday morning a post is scheduled that you didn't have anything to do with. You go check the comments and respond to 5 of them, respond to 2 of them, and respond to all of them if you want to. And that is like the fun engagement part that says, oh, this person really is authentic and they're here and they're paying attention.
Yeah.
So,
I will say this, that you don't need 500,000. I mean, maybe if you want to go absolutely huge and make a 7-figure launch of a product or something like that. But, even when I launched my tarot deck, I probably had 15,000 followers and I still made over 50K on the Kickstarter launch. And so I think it's about building an authentic audience. The people know that when I post there, I'm not commercially pushing something. I'm not just a cheese ball trying to get stuff out. I mean, I'm just trying to document how an illustrator lives their life, and here's the stuff that I'm making. And so I think it's a good engaged audience for being so small comparatively to some of the bigger people.
Right. And to bring back the bike example, this is essentially the steering. Like, this is the strategy part, is figuring out where to steer that bicycle. You've got the pumping of the pedals, you've got the wheels are all fully inflated, everything, the frame is all tight. Now you got to have some strategy and figure out, am I going to take this bumpy road here that's really hard, that goes uphill, or am I going to go on this flat, sidewalk part? And that's what you got to figure out next.
I didn't add anything to the bicycle analogy. I'm going to add 2 things to the bicycle analogy. One, the seat. You should have good seating in your studio. That's one thing.
How would you draw that bike with
I need a new
a
chair.
rabbit on it?
So have good seating in your studio. But the other thing is, just like a bike, just like a bike ride, pick a road, like Jake said, that is that's sort of flat, but that you can go a long time. So it's not super hard and it's not downhill. It's just a long, straight road, and you just pedal. And over time, it's amazing how far you go. Do you guys know that I rode the entire coast of California on my bike?
No.
That was right before I met you guys. Lisa and I rode my wife, we rode the whole Oregon coast from Washington to California.
Wow.
Was that so fun?
Oh my God. It was awesome. It was amazing. But it's funny because you really are going slow. And then after a week, you're across the entire state. It's amazing how quick the journey happens. But while you're pedaling, it's kind of slow. So it kind of goes with this bike analogy.
Are you going to do bike over the Rocky Mountains?
No, you can't do that.
That would be crazy.
I'll do it on an e-bike maybe.
So you're saying on the analogy of going down a road, you're saying that
just pedal
and
keep pedaling.
That they're going to build this audience over time and not worry about today so much as worry about having a lifetime of fun of creating and gathering their audience over time.
Right. It's like the bike tour down California. It's you're not making a ton of mileage daily, but you're seeing cool stuff, you're making cool stuff. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you look back on it and you're like, wow, I traveled a long way. It just didn't seem like it at the time. But if you start in a sprint, trying to do the Tour de France and you're not ready for that, you're going to burn yourself out. It's going to be too hard. Right. It's a slow, enjoyable thing.
And let me say this too. Because we were talking about this morning. And we're not going to name names. We're not going to read comments. But every now and then we get negative comments that are like, yeah, the gist is like, yeah, sure, you guys can do it because you've got an audience and, you can launch a product and it can become successful. But it's too late for the rest of us because social media is saturated and blah, blah, blah. And just fill in like all the complaints that you've ever heard. And the thing is, with that is when the 3 of us started in illustration, I'll just always go back to this. When I was in school, our teachers were like, hey, the percentages wise, there's 20 of you in the class here, maybe one of you will make it in illustration. Now, if they said that in the engineering program, no one would if they said that for physicians, for med school,
Yeah.
hey, out of this whole class, maybe a couple of you will become doctors. No, everybody becomes a doctor. Everybody becomes an engineer. But in illustration, it's like, no, in order to make it an illustration, none of you are really going to make it. I mean, we had teachers all the time. That has not changed. Okay. What will change is next year, a year will have gone by, and the negative Nancy's out there will still be negative, and they'll still be trying to tear you down or tear yourself down. And then 5 years is going to pass, and you're going to look back, and every one of us has regrets in our lives, things that we wish we had done,
Right.
things we wish we hadn't done. But that time is going to pass, and you are going to look back. And it's really, I mean, life is too short and, to me, too fun. I have overcome so many hurdles and so many setbacks and so many failures. And I could have easily said I could list out all my failures and say after each one of these, I could have just quit and said, yeah, you can't make it. You can't make any money doing your own projects or trying to make it as an illustrator. Why bother? I'm just going to go get a job. And to those people who have done that and who have gotten a job, there's no criticism coming at you. You can be a positive person working a job. What my criticism is towards the person who just is an emotional drain on everyone around them, saying, you can't make it, you can't do anything.
Right. I mean, that's what we were talking about before we started recording here, is like the alternative to not making the thing you're doing is just to give up and say, oh, well, there's nothing to be made. Everything's already made. I mean, think about how many books are in the world. Think about how many games are in the world, all of it. I mean, but yet people are still creating these things and they're still good.
And there are
they're still needed.
projects, and just look on Kickstarter at any given time. There are people crushing it. I watched I like this guy on YouTube named Peter Santinello, who does little documentaries and stuff of different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And he was talking to someone the other day, and they were driving down the street, and the guy's like, well, you can't make it. He was doing this talk. He was like, well, I can't do anything because, look, all these businesses along the sides of the street in our small town, they've already been started. They're already owned. Someone already owns that business, that business, that business, that business, that, and I'm sitting there going, you don't have any kind of vision for the fact that it's not about running a franchise that someone else has already started.
Yeah.
You can create something. It takes, you have to fight the resistance. You have to fight the negative voices in your head that'll say,
let me share.
You'll never be able to do it. You'll never be good enough. You'll never come up with anything creative enough. And
You're good enough.
I'll go back and
You're
play a video
smart.
game again because that way I can just check out. And we all need a way to check out. I'm not, but at the same time, you're capable of so much.
I want to show you guys. I'm sharing my screen right now for those of you guys who are on YouTube. I was doing a deep dive of Kickstarter over the past week on this topic of the subject matter screwdrivers. If you guys think that it's hard to write a creative book, these people are reinventing a screwdriver. And I tell you this, I surfed these screwdrivers for a long time. I went into each campaign and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know screwdrivers could actually be as awesome as some of these tools are. They're kind of reimagining how a freaking screwdriver works. And they're sort of amazing. And there's multi-tools out on the market. There's screwdrivers obviously already on the market, and yet they moved forward and they made something. I mean, this one here just came out. It's got 4 days to go. It made $10,000. It's a screwdriver. There's no storytelling involved in this. I mean, screwdrivers work fine, but they changed them in some way. They thought that there was a problem or they could make it better. And so if people can make screwdrivers better, I guarantee you guys can make stories better. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a concept. And And if you lean into that, it's interesting because people are interested in stories, and we repeat the sort of the same stories with just different settings, and there's reassurance in that. But we have an easier time than somebody selling a screwdriver, and yet here's 6 new screwdrivers on Kickstarter. So you got to make the thing.
Yeah, I want to point out too, to keep going with this bicycle metaphor, is a lot of times I see artists who are like, they've got the road bike, but they're trying to mountain bike with a road bike, right?
Right.
Or they're
True.
on their mountain bike and they're trying to like go on, down smooth road, but these big knobby tires just aren't able to like work as efficiently. And sometimes you might need to check and see what is the match for how I create art and how I'm like developed as a professional or as a creator, and am I making it in the proper genre or in the proper space? A lot of times people think, well, I love graphic novels and I want to make graphic novels, but you yourself might not be the best person to make a graphic novel. Maybe you're way more suited for illustrating picture books or something like that, right? Just to give an example. And so the job for you is to figure out where are my skills and where do they overlap with opportunity, essentially, is what
Can't put a square peg in a round hole. Like I'm exactly what Jake just described. Like I could do a graphic novel. I have no interest in doing a graphic novel. I lose interest too fast. I know my nature is like a squirrel. I'm like that squirrel in the Ice Age. Like I'm just bouncing between things.
Me too. It's too many. I like making bigger images that are. I don't know. I'm not this.
Will
the
Terry
quick
is
little-
like, you are like primed and ready to be a puzzle maker, like to make
Yeah.
illustrations for puzzles.
Yeah.
Yet, how
true.
many puzzles have you made?
0.0 right now.
Yeah. Like you've got the mountain bike all figured and ready to go for the puzzle terrain.
It'll
And
happen.
you're like, well, I'm just going to go over here and do a card game.
It'll happen. It's on my list.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
let's move on from the bicycle. Can my new screwdriver work on our bicycle analogy?
I don't see why I couldn't.
Need a tool. You guys go to Kickstarter and just enter in the search screwdrivers. You'll see some of these beautiful things. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay, this next question, man, it's such in the same vein as what we're talking about. I don't know if there's anything we can add, but I'll read it anyway. This comes from Alana. She says, your audience needs an audience, or do I? So, hi guys, love the podcast. It makes my commute so much more enjoyable. Thank you. I'm a full-time art teacher and mom. My goal is to be an author illustrator. I know I have a ways to go, but my question is about social media. Here we go again. I'm not very active, but I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter/X. How important is it? How can I grow my IG following? I'm currently working on a picture book dummy that I can query with and would like to get traditionally published if I can. So I don't necessarily want to share those images. I don't have much of a portfolio. I also make abstract art and have sold a few pieces locally. And I like mural painting and would like to do more of that. So my website and Instagram is kind of a mix of everything. But my main creative goal is becoming an author illustrator. So again, how important is a social media following and how do I get there? Working full time and my family life means I really have to squeeze my creative energy out when I can. That's why right now I'm focusing on the dummies versus standalone portfolio pieces. What do you guys suggest? Should I be carving out more time to build my platform and or make portfolio pieces? If so, what do I post and how do I grow? Thank you for answering this. So her goal is to break into publishing. And, if you listen to our Samantha Cotterill episode, which she's coming on the podcast again to kind of follow up on that, see how things are going a year, 2 years later, whenever we interviewed her last. She doesn't have a social media following, and she's getting book deal after book deal. And so the thing there is she really has a dialed in, appealing, contemporary style that publishers are looking for. She has an agent, and the agent essentially is doing all the work for getting her essentially on the radar of different editors and art directors.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is, I think, your path for you trying to break into publishing is to get your work to a level where you have someone who's confident in presenting your work. Now, looking at your work, we're going to do a little review here of the work that you have posted on your portfolio. What do you guys think?
I think she's not ready for the question she's asking.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's early. I think I think it's a good start, but I think she's got probably another 2 years of portfolio building exclusively in order to get to the point where she can ask this question that makes sense. And that might sound discouraging, but it's a really important point I want to make, because I actually responded to somebody on the SVS forum who's sort of asking the same question. They said, I sent out 30 queries to agents, I sent out all this stuff to publishers, and nobody's biting. Should I quit? Should I keep going? And I'm like, I looked at the work and I was like, you are way too premature on asking this question. You're not ready to send out to an agent yet. The work needs to be there, and you need to dive into the work. And it's funny because we've created, in this current social media hyped kind of era, the fact that you got to do all this stuff at once, and there, for an illustrator, there needs to be a period of building and building and building. And I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about just the skills. You got to buckle down, get in the chair, and make images. And then you make more images and throw the earlier images away, and then you make new images and you throw those images away. And there's a recycling process that happens over probably 3 or 4 years, I think, to get somebody from a beginner state to a state where they're even ready to say, hey, okay, here's 10 cohesive pieces that are really engaging. They have all the hallmarks of understanding how to make images and tell stories. And those two things are not the same. You can make really nice images and still not know how to tell stories. And so you got to dig in.
That's so important.
Yeah, you got to dig in, and you got to do the work and not worry so much about this. Now, you can, like Jake was saying earlier, use this process of building up your social media, but in no way is this person ready for professional work, in my opinion.
So there's a couple of things that I wanted to say too. Is her artwork is, to me, seems like she's consciously going for a more primitive art style. And one thing that I would really like to say to Alana is, there's primitive, and then there's really skilled primitive, right? There's primitive because that's the level that you're at, and then there's someone
like a Rebecca Green who
there's somebody who's basically undrawing. Like if you look at Lee's figure work that he's capable of, you did the figure class recently, right? For SVS. It's a high level of skill in drawing. And then you look at his portfolio of children's artwork, and it's a high level of design and color and drawing, but the drawing is intentionally made to look like perhaps a child did it.
Yeah, clunky.
Right, clunky. It's skilled clunkiness. And it's so hard to put into words other than without showing like lots of examples of it. Like children, if you went into any elementary school and you looked on the walls and you saw all their primitive children's looking artwork, there's a charm to some of it because it's so innocent and it's so unexpectedly interpretive sometimes, right?
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes we as skilled artists look at some of the happy accidents they have and go, and we wish that we could recreate some of that freshness in our work. And I see some of that freshness in her work. However, there are places where there needs to be more skill in pulling off emotion, in pulling off, let's say, cuteness of characters and things with just subtle little changes. It could be super charming, but instead it what it does is it looks like she couldn't do it.
Right.
If there's not a better way to say that. So
I want
my
to
thing is,
point out. Oh, go ahead.
but if you want to be an artist or an author and an illustrator, usually people are better at one or the other. They either come from the art side and they're trying to learn the writing side, or they come from the writing side and they're trying to learn the illustration side. So I would say lean into the one. If you're better at writing, you can always have an illustrator illustrate your work. If your illustration is better than your writing, then you really need to work on that illustration, because you could write a great story and submit it to a publisher, but your artwork probably at this point right now is probably going to get a pass for the whole project.
I want to point out Rebecca Green, because she's, I think, like, just rides the line between looking like a kid drew it and looking like a pro illustrator, right?
Yeah.
You know, look at the lettering here. This is not spaced out correctly. It's leaning a little bit, but it looks intentional, right? It looks like there's a designness to it. Every individual component of this looks almost like a kid drew it, or a mark that a kid would make. Look at these hands, right?
But the overall design is...
But the overall design, the color palette, the texture, it's all super solid. And what I think would serve you well is to go find, one or two artists that you absolutely love their style, and try to see if you can make an exact replica of their style, not to shift your style to be like theirs, but to just see what it takes to make something professional looking, right? Because a lot of times, I remember as a kid, I would do my drawings. I'd be so frustrated because I couldn't get Superman's muscles right. So then I'd pull out a comic and I'd like copy the exact drawing of a Superman. And the whole time I'm doing that, I'm like, oh, that's how a tricep works. Oh, that's how foreshortening works. Oh, look how he drew the hair. That's interesting. The next time I draw Superman, it's looking in my style, but 10 times better, because I picked up all these little nuances. And so there's just something to be done, or to be learned from actually you yourself making a professional piece, sort of with training wheels, so that then you can go pedal yourself, get on that bike, and learn those skills and apply them to you. So, yeah, I agree with both of you that, like, the skills aren't quite there yet, but doesn't mean that it's not possible.
Right. It just means a year or two of grinding and seeing where that takes you. And I think the bigger I'll give a tip to people who want to do a sort of primitive style or naive style. When you take away one big aspect of it, which is really skilled drawing, the other stuff becomes even more important. This is going to be a horrible analogy, but like if somebody loses their eyesight, the other senses are heightened, right? Mm-hmm. So they can hear better, they can feel better, they can almost sense things better. I'm just guessing at this, but that's what I've heard. And it's the same thing with doing something really naive. So for example, if I'm not going to draw, say I'm doing a picture of a kid at a zoo and he's looking at a lion, like I'm not going to draw the lion like a realistic lion. That means my shape language, my composition, my value control, and my palette become extremely important, and texture too. But it becomes more important than it would have been had I drawn a really realistic lion, because that sort of carries it a little bit more. So just take that as a little tip. Like right now in this work, we have primitive mark making, but we also have a lack of kind of composition, and that's the big thing that I think she needs to work on, and overall graphic design. And so studying graphic design might help an artist like this if she does want to lean into that more design-based style, look to patterns and things like that. But right now, it's sort of all at the same level. So like right now, if you're going to go primitive with the mark making, the other stuff has to come up.
Right. And the palette too. Like a lot of her colors look like they're just straight out of the box. And if you look at Rebecca Green's stuff, she is very intentional about the palette. She's going to pick a red that's, a little bit desaturated, but then she's going to have a very saturated blue to like contrast that, there's,
And it's work.
there's
I don't know if you get her newsletter, but I was
yes.
getting her newsletter for a little while, and she really puts the work in doing studies. She'll do 10 studies of one piece, seeing what kind of mark making she's going to use for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's really like, man, whenever I meet someone who, shows me their work and it's like, I'm just not sure how I should move forward or what I should do. I'm like, is this all the art that you've made? Yeah, this is all the art I made. It's like 15 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, let's talk when you've done 100 pieces. Let's talk when you've done 200 pieces, because you're going to figure out stuff just from iteration, right? And I think a lot of people want to just get to that finished piece and have that be, and have them learn everything they can from that one finished piece, when really it's like, here's all of the stuff that's on the cutting room floor, and I'm just showing you the 10% of of what I've made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a great way to do it, by the way, to build it. It's tough to say, okay, I'm going to wait 2 years and then I'll have a good portfolio or something like that. That's a real tough thing to kind of mentally process. But what I like is what Jake just said is I need to put in more work. I don't really know where the problems are right now. I'm going to do 50 paintings. And at that point, I will start thinking about which images might be good and where I want to go. But if you have that number, man, it takes all the pressure off you. You make a bad piece, well, that's just one of the 50. Make another bad piece, you're just adding them up. But you do 50 pieces, there's going to be 5 that show the direction you're going to go and start to have promise. And then you throw away the 45, you keep the 5, and then you do another 20 or 30 paintings and see if you can keep pushing that direction. And then all of a sudden, at the end, you end up with a very cohesive, very intentional portfolio that you have tons of work to choose from.
Yeah. All right. Is that it for today?
Now, let me just add this one last thing, because it goes along with the advice that I gave on the forum. At the end of that process, you do have to throw away all the stuff that didn't work. And that is very tough to do, because people get attached to the work they made. Sometimes they get attached to the time they put in. Oh, this one took me 20 hours. I'm not going to throw it away.
Right.
You have to. That's part of the process.
So important. Yeah.
You can't have it all on the website and say, well, here's 50 pieces and, of varying quality, of varying styles. It just doesn't work.
Right. Okay, I'm going to take us out, if you guys are cool with that.
Yep.
3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, specifically self-publishingpro.com right now, where if you gotten anything out of this episode and felt like, oh man, this episode was for me, you're going to love our 6-video mini course for Self-Publishing Pro. And if you love that, you're going to love the 9-week full intensive that we're doing starting the end of this month or the beginning of next month. So don't sleep on that. Do check it out. And we'd love to have you join us, because I want to see in about a year from now, I want to get emails and comments on the videos saying, hey, check out this book that I've made. Thank you so much for helping me with this process. Because I'm really excited to see what...
The 3 of us are constantly saying, we wished we would have had this when we did our first projects, A, B, C, D, E. Like, I know that I wouldn't have had as many failures. Having said that, I've learned a lot from my failures, but
you can
painful.
avoid a lot of the failures.
In
I'll
the
give a
moment,
little taste. My lecture this week that I'm doing is just on how do you ship a bunch of stuff. If you haven't done anything, like I had 1,100 backers for my tarot deck. How do you ship 1,100 orders if you've never done that before? It's a whole thing, and so we are diving deep into all this stuff.
Right. And my lecture is Kickstarter. Kickstarter is a changing and evolving platform, but there's some principles that kind of apply in any era of Kickstarter, and that's what I'm going over. Is here's your checklist. Make sure you do all these particular things, And then here's essentially like my method of how do you lay out the information so it's easy to understand and converts people to wanting to buy the thing that you're offering. So you don't want to miss it. Okay, so special thanks to our people who helped make this podcast possible. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu, our keeper of curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our illustrator, Annalise Black. Thank you to all of you for that help. Now, go draw something. Okay. That was good.
Boom. Big bike analogy we didn't know was coming.
I've been working on that bike analogy, the pedal thing, for a long time. I just haven't. I just haven't had a reason to share it.
I like the wheels.
Well, I have been using
Yeah.
the pedaling the tires thing with the idea for a long time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I've been using the steering wheel thing.
I'm talking about having good seating.
I'm like, you're jumping in on my bike analogy? I don't think so.
We forgot to mention helmets. You always got to wear a helmet, too. I don't know how that applies exactly in this analogy, but
That means don't spend money that you don't have so you don't crash.
the other day, I drive my son to school, right? And the other day, he goes, if I had to make a wish through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I'm like, where's this going? He's all, not that I'd ever want to be in a position where I'd get to make a wish, but if I got to, if I had to, if I got sick and I had to make a wish, and I'm like, Calvin, what are you talking about? He's all, wait just a second. What's the legal age limit for still being able to make a wish for the Make-A-Wish Foundation? I said, it's probably under 18. He's like, okay, so let's say I got some kind of disease, but it was, curable, right? I was like, just tell me what your wish is, Calvin. Cut to the chase. He says, okay, so if I got sick and I got to make a wish, and I'm just gonna swing for the fences here, I'd want my Pokemon design to be in the next new region. And I was like, that's really sweet. And then he goes, he's like, I still got 3 years to get sick before I can, because he's 15 now. He's like, I still got 3 years to get sick so I can make this wish. And then he's like, wait, is there a Make-A-Wish adult edition version?
Is his plan B to win the lottery? This is a crazy plan.
Plan A is to get sick.
And then make a wish.
Plan B is to get sick and make a wish.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah,
Oh
he
my
cracks me
God.
up. He
That's
cracks
funny.
me up.
You guys, I'm going to be rich. Just got an email. This guy wants to buy some of my paintings for $15,000 to $15,000. That's their range.
NFT.
And they want to know if I can take a check, and they'll write it for a little bit more because he's traveling to the United States from out of the country, and he wants to surprise his wife.
There you go.
Yep.
Sign right up for that.
I like it
How
when
many
they
red
offer.
flags are there in that?
Yeah, that was everyone.
They were all there.
That was everyone. I'm a Norwegian or Saudi prince.
Actually, I got a new version of that email. Can I read it? Can I read it to you? It's titled, all caps, Workshop Project. And I'm like, Workshop Project? Oh, okay. This might be interesting. Because I just got a legitimate email from one of those companies that, hires artists to do the getaways, the travel to another destination. And there's a couple of companies we were talking about last week with Lisa Bardo. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, Workshop Project. Hello. I hope this message finds you in good health. That's red flag number 1. Nobody talks that way. Number 2, I'm Dale Ellis, a learning facilitator from Montgomery Schools, County Schools in Troy, North Carolina, and it's a pleasure to reach out to you. Your contact details were discovered on your website, and I was impressed by your exceptional works reflecting your expertise in your craft. Right there. No, that's a robot talking. That's not.
Right.
That is not a human speaking.
You are good at the
Okay,
things
I
that
am.
you do.
Yeah. So here comes the ask. I'm deeply interested in acquiring some of your pieces for an upcoming workshop project titled "Learn About It: Safeguard and Averting." That's the workshop. Could you please share images of available artworks along with their respective prices and sizes for immediate sale? Our budget ranges from $1,500 to $15,000. This
So I
doesn't
got the
make any
same one.
sense.
That's what I said, 1,500, and mine was from North Carolina too.
Okay. Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. So it's a workshop project,
Right.
but they're going to be selling artwork for $15,000.
Right.
Your prompt response would be highly appreciated, aiding me in making informed and selective choices. Additionally, I would like to inquire if you accept checks as means of payment. So
That's what mine said.
you guys gotta watch out for that crap. Don't.
Dude, I just got that same email, but for NFTs on Instagram. And I
Yeah.
was like, man, I'll sell you. He's offering 5,000 per NFT for 4 of them, $20,000. And I said, wow, $20,000. I said, you know what? If you give me a deposit of $1,000 cash, I'll give you all of them for free. And they just kept going back and forth. And he's like, no, I would go to give you 20,000. I'm like, nope, I just want 1,000, but I want it up front.
Right. It cracks me up too that after NFTs have completely tanked, like that whole market is over with, that someone's still like reaching out about it.
Are we recording? Can we just go ahead and
Yeah.
say that I was right about the NFTs? Can we just throw that my way?
Here's what I
Go
will
back
say.
and listen to the NFT issue.
Here's what I will say. Every artist that I know who was involved in NFTs, whether they made a ton of money or not, is completely done with it. There's nothing happening there. Nobody's involved in it anymore.
Wow.
So that's what I know. Okay. let's do a
Well,
let's
Lee
get into-
had a lot of experience with NFTs.
Oh yeah, what happened to your didn't you post an NFT? Did that ever sell?
It has not sold. I've had many offers on Instagram for people from princes from Saudi Arabia. Doesn't seem to
Do you know
be
what's funny too? It's
following
like
through.
the convergence of AI and NFT culture, like it was a recipe for just implosion. Right? I wish Midjourney had launched like in full right before NFTs, and then you just see 1 million people churning out 100 images every day and
That's funny.
turning them into NFTs.
That's funny.
Okay. Let's start this podcast.
Wait, if this banter makes it, can I just have one request to the scammers?
Yeah.
Why not invest a little bit in getting the email right? I don't understand the expediency of shooting out the weird email, like you're saying, with this weird grammatical thing and the biggest red flag I see when I get those things, it starts out with "Hello, dear."
Yeah.
Who says that? Hello, dear.
Well, we're lucky. We're lucky that they haven't figured out the. It's
just
kind of
get a
like
proofreader.
It's kind of like the movie where the aliens trying to be a human, but they're not quite there.
Right.
And,
Kind of
and
like
the
the
people
Polar
around them
Express
are like,
movie.
"What?"
Do you know
know?
what? I read a couple articles on. No, I listened to an in-depth interview podcast about scammers, and this article in New York Times about a guy who had escaped this sort of shadow industry. What happens is there's a scamming operation where part of it is recruitment for future scammers. And what they do is they post job opportunities. This is usually in South Asia, Southeastern Asia, right? Where a lot of this stuff originates. And they post job opportunities, and it's like, hey, we need someone with your particular expertise. It's time for you to level up. And so this one guy that I read an article on, he got this crazy job offer in Indonesia. So he gets on a plane. He's from China, I believe. He gets on a plane. He goes to the airport. They handle all the arrangements for him. And as soon as he arrives to get picked up, he's like essentially shoved in a van, hood over his head, and taken to this sort of prison facility. It's got like fences around it, and it's built on a complex in essentially no man's land. It's in an area where there's like two countries where the border's contested, so nobody really regulates what happens in this area. So now all of these like casinos and like gambling operations and scamming operations pop up in this area. And he said, essentially they said, okay, here's the deal. You need to earn something like $300,000 through scamming, or maybe it's like 30,000. I don't know, something like that. You need to earn that much before we'll let you go.
Right.
And they train them on how to do the scamming, and they have these rooms with cell phones all wired up, and they're all doing like sending out messages, and they all have got this coding on making like individual DMs to people. And the whole setup is like, they had, in some instances, they're like, hey, come invest with us. And they target like women, Asian women who their husbands don't let them like handle the funds. And they're like, you want some independence, right? You want to make your own money. This is how you're going to do it. And they build up this relationship, and then they say, okay, put some money into this thing. They give them a return. It's like, oh my gosh, you're so smart. You know, you invested in the right thing. You doubled your money. You know, you should put everything in it. And so then they put everything in it, and then they're like, when they go to try to pull them out, they can't access the funds anymore, and the people are ghosted, and they move on.
Oh, wow.
And so this guy was able to escape because he somehow got a phone that was bricked or something, so that like it I forget what it was like, wasn't attached to their network, and he was able to reach out and contact his family and contact authorities and tell him where he's at. And once they found that out, they like chained him to like a server rack and were beating him and stuff, but he was eventually like rescued and took home. And so yeah, it's a really crazy, scary, dark world out there, and I wonder if these are the same people trying to get artists to cash checks, you know.
It's crazy.
Wild. That sounds like a Mission Impossible movie coming up.
Right. Yeah, but if you want to read that article, I'll send you a link to it. It was super fascinating. That was like my Sunday morning one morning, where I'm just like, it was like one of those 7,000 word exposés on it. I was like, oh,
those are interesting though when you get all the way into them and you start, you know, it's good writing and stuff. Yeah.
What's cool though is that guy, he actually licensed his story as a movie, so I think they're gonna make some sort of book or movie from it.
There you go.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right,
Anyway, let's start this.